Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 111th edition. God, that's a difficult thing to say. Of the Frank and Stan chat, and delighted that Meena Wood has joined us from a balcony at 10:30 in the evening at 27 degrees from Turkey. So, hello, Meena.
Hello.
Hello,
Good evening.
I have to say, Mina, the signal from Turkey is better than most of the signals are getting from the UK, I can tell you that. But anyway, how are you, Stan?
I'm good. Very hot, but
Yeah.
good. But not as hot as Mina, clearly.
Well, I'm not hot, actually. It's actually quite cool now, given it was 38 degrees earlier on.
Oh,
So,
was it?
yeah,
Wow.
27's marvellous.
Well, Mina, there may be one or two people who don't know who you are. So I wondered if you'd just give us a little summary of your career and the sort of stuff that you're up to at the moment.
Yes, sure. Thanks very much, Frank. And I'm really delighted to be invited to do this podcast. It really is, a real privilege. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, so I was an HMI, finished in 2014 and was there for 12 years, I think. So quite a long period of my career was as HMI. But prior to that, I was started off as a teacher, French teacher, and then moved into FE, strangely, only because I felt that teaching languages was a bit of a lost cause in secondary schools in those days. It probably still is now, because it hasn't got much more of a status now than it had then, having seen the state of language teaching. And so I moved into FE, and basically did some training in delivering literacy and language, so language to speakers of other languages and so on. Ended up in FE in various positions as senior leader, and then managing very big departments in 3 big FE colleges in London, and then finally as principal of adult college within Lewisham College, actually with Lewisham College in London. So my career then went off in a different tack. So when I joined Ofsted in, I think it was I can't even remember, such a long time ago, 2002 possibly. Yes.
Yeah, I joined in 2001. I think you were the year after me.
It was the year after you, right?
Yeah.
So when I joined then, I started off in what we call the PSED division, which was actually the post-continuing education. So that was really, really interesting. It was a brilliant time for me because I did all sorts of inspections, youth offenders, I don't know, local authorities, you name it, I was doing them. Schools, I wasn't doing schools at that point, but colleges, also connections in those days we did. And it was just a fascinating, in fact, one of the most fascinating parts was actually going into prisons and doing those, the youth offender institutes. But the other thing I really loved doing were thematic surveys that we did in those days, which was superb because they informed government policy, informed Ofsted policy, something which I feel is really missing today. That whole area, that whole ethos that we had as HMI, and I say had because I really don't feel it's there now, inspecting without fear or favour, being impartial, being very distinct and removed from the DfE, and able to work autonomously and with integrity. And it was a privilege being an HMI, so I really did enjoy that whole career, that part of my career, when I moved into schools in 2006, I think, because we had to make a choice between FE and schools. So obviously I was doing Section 8, Section 5s. I was also doing ITT inspections. That was also very good. And I loved working under Christine Gilbert, who was the HMCI. I was her Equalities HMI and did a lot of training with HMI on implementing the equalities and community cohesion part of our framework. So that was very, very interesting. I worked with some brilliant colleagues on that. Then I left in 2014 when there was a sort of change of regime, and moved into sort of doing the usual sort of consultancy work that lots of HMI do when they leave. But I really, really wanted to go back into the school sector and work in a school, because I was missing being in the classroom. I was missing being part of, being in the school rather than working alongside a school. So I did some interim headships up until 2018, and then worked as a substantive head for a year.
Right. Was that in London or?
No, that was in Corby, actually.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it was in Corby, and that was the problem, because it was up there, and
Yeah.
after a year I had to make a decision whether I was going to move up there, and I didn't. To be honest, I couldn't move up there. It was just a step too far for me. It was very, very different to London, as you can imagine.
Yes.
And I just didn't feel I could keep commuting, which is what I was doing on a weekly basis. It was, very sad to leave, but I felt, it wasn't really for me. So I left, and then I turned my attention to writing a book, which is my second book. The first book I wrote when I was working in FE, and this second book is called Secondary Curriculum. I've just forgotten the name for a minute. Secondary Curriculum Transformed. And the whole point of this book was I was inspired by something I'd read from Albert Einstein, something he'd written in 1921. So that would be about 100 years before. And what he said was, education, I'm just going to quote it actually, education is not the learning of facts, but the training of minds to think. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. And then he goes on to say, education is what remains after we have forgotten what we've learned at school. And that just about summed it up for me, because I thought, you know what, this knowledge-led curriculum that we've got here doesn't do it for me, and it doesn't do it for a lot of children, 1/3 of whom have failed every year in their GCSE exams. And not just that, even in the SATs, we have now, for example, 25% of children have now failed, if you like, their SATs for whatever reason. Only 75% have got through. And that is, an abysmal figure. In fact, I think it's lower than that. I think the 75% I'm quoting is probably the reading SATs figure. But certainly the GCSEs, the way they're worked out at the moment, I felt just didn't hack it. So the book is all about delivering a curriculum that encompasses knowledge and skills, and actually in that way fits up children and young people for our society, the society of today, the society of the future, just as other countries are doing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've worked in India for quite a bit. I didn't mention that, but I worked in India for quite a bit, doing work with principals and looking at their curriculum. And India has just changed its curriculum. Last year, they changed their curriculum, and they moved from knowledge to knowledge and skills. Singapore's done that. Australia has it.
Well, we know Wales have done that.
Wales have done it nearer home, exactly. Yeah. And even Northern Ireland has it, because I work with principals in Northern Ireland. They have it in theory, but they don't necessarily know, they're not implementing it in the way it should be implemented. So there is so much there, around the world for us to look at. I'm currently working with schools in Dubai, and I'm working with British curriculum schools and IB, international bac schools. And it's quite fascinating, because when you look at the IB, you see children becoming real learners, self-directed learning. You see them move from instructional to guided to self-directed. Children as young as 4 years old doing that. And I'm thinking, we've got 16-year-olds sitting in lessons who are being force-fed information that they have to recall and reproduce in an exam. That can't be right. So the book, as I said, encapsulates examples from around the world, talks around how you can create a curriculum that's meaningful, relevant for children, and involves choice and moves away from the EBAC to something which values creative vocational education, technical education, and allows children to choose what they need to learn for their future careers, you know, the future destinations. So yeah, so that's where I'm at.
Wow.
So I'm doing that and then working abroad. And my next book, Frank, I've decided, because Routledge has approached me on this for next year to look at writing. I'm looking at how you can create a better curriculum by taking aspects from IB and the British curriculum, because I'll tell you what's missing with the IB, because they don't have a summative assessment at 16. They don't have that threshold assessment. What happens is children move from 16, you know, they do some continuing formative and go straight into the diploma part, which is fine, but there is no measurement of their knowledge base once they move into that area. And the one thing about the British curriculum is knowledge is there. So the underpinning knowledge combined with the skills that they develop in IB, an amazing array of skills, I feel would really, you know, that interdisciplinary approach would really benefit our children in the UK. Yeah, gosh. So that's
we did a study on independent learning and creativity in primaries, and found that the strongest was in reception, and it slowly disappeared. Absolutely. And so that by the time children were in Key Stage 2 in Year 6, the teacher was putting the stuff out for them. Yeah. Whereas in reception, they'd learn to get their own things organised.
And it's marvellous when you see it, isn't it, Stan?
It is.
I mean, when you see small children, I was watching them in Dubai doing that, and I was thinking, wow, you know, these kids really, you know what I mean? There was that sense of purpose, determination. Even the children who had special needs, you know, really you could see they were motivated to go off, and they weren't sort of thinking, well, I'm just going to sit here and wait for my TA to do it for me. You know, they were literally trying to do it for themselves. So pretty, I think it's something that we should be thinking about.
Wow.
So that's me.
Fantastic. Well, what's caught your eye then, Stan? There's been a lot going on this week.
I think that's the quietest I've been in one of these for the longest amount of time.
Actually, Meena's done this the other way around, because actually we learn all the time from our guests that actually just let your guest run away with it, you know, and just tell us what they've been doing. It's fascinating. What's caught your eye anyway?
What's caught my eye is obviously the leadership. I call it a farce that's going on at the moment for the Conservative Party, and the way it's not managed, it's not controlled. I understand they were putting some rules together today after some people have launched theirs, and I just wondered if this is going to have an impact eventually on headship, on leadership in schools, and could we mirror this technique where, you know, head teachers would, or aspirant head teachers would have to find 7 signatures from other head teachers to say, yes, we think they're up to the job, we would support them in that. And then they produce a 5 or 10 minute video, preferably with Churchill and a Lancaster bomber involved.
And Olympic athletes.
Yeah, anybody who's possibly unsuitable to be in, we'll put those in as well.
Yeah, because apparently it was the one that was pulled had Oscar Pistorius in it, didn't it?
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I have to say, you're looking at putting a video out, that's probably not a good choice, is it? I mean, you wouldn't need to have studied communication and media at university to know that's probably not a good call.
Well, I would say to anybody who's seen that particular one to have a look at the day-to-day spoof video of a government film to tell everybody it's okay, it's all right, let's not panic, and see if you can spot the difference. But then I thought, if governors then just reduced the number of head teachers applying to 2 in the interview process, we could then have a parental vote, and we could have a hustings of 2 head teachers. Now, you're laughing now, but some of my crazy ideas in the past.
Actually, sorry, Stan, but I think you should have children voting.
Oh yeah.
Definitely.
Well, there is an element of that, isn't there? In some interviews, the students get a say. I'm not saying that they get to vote. But yeah, reduce to 2 and then have hustings where the parents come in and hurl abuse at them. I think that would be really good. But I can actually see the video bit creeping in. I really can.
Really? Sort of like a manifesto video.
Skills, IT skills, presentation skills, communication skills.
You've been you're given an hour to do it, Stan.
Yeah. Yeah, an iPhone and a room.
Oh dear. Talking of things that don't quite go quite so well, Mina, what's caught your eye this week?
Well, I think it has to be the video that's gone viral of the person whose name is instantly forgettable.
Andrea Jenkins.
Yeah, that's the one. With the middle finger, because I mean, I'm sitting in Turkey here, and I as I said earlier, I mean, I'm just taking things off my Bing feed. I'm not even able to, sometimes I'm listening to iPlayer, but generally speaking, I'm tending not to sort of look at stuff that's going on out there. But hey, it was hard not to look at this one, and it came up on a Twitter feed, and it was possibly the most shocking thing I've seen. For an education minister to do that, and I actually thought it was a spoof at first. I didn't realize it was the real thing, and only until I heard my Turkish friends say to me that it appeared on Turkish TV, and it was actually a news item where Turkish people were looking at this absolutely aghast, because the British education system is held in esteem here. You have international schools where middle-class parents, for example, in Istanbul and Ankara and the main cities, really aspire to send their children at very, very high fees that they pay. And these are English-speaking international schools. And they compete, it's very, very competitive to get them in. And they only have a certain number of quota of children that can get in. So education is really high on their list, and English is a really important language for them to learn. So to actually see this woman who's a junior minister doing that on a viral is, for the Turkish, was the worst thing they could have seen, because they really revere education.
So how are they viewing this then? How are the Turks viewing?
And so they were saying to me, my friends were genuinely engaging with me and saying, well, won't she get the sack effectively? I mean, her boss got the sack for telling lies and attending parties when he shouldn't have done. So won't she get the sack? And I looked at them and I just thought, now what on earth do I say to this? Because clearly she's not going to get the sack, because there's many more like her from where she came, or from whence she came, I should say. I mean, she's not the only one, but I didn't want to say this because I thought, my goodness, where do I stop? It's a really difficult. It's a really difficult position to be in, sitting here.
You've lived abroad quite a lot, haven't you, during your life? I mean, how does it feel being British? And you've stayed in Turkey for quite some time, haven't you? You've had extended stays. How does that? How does it feel telling people that you're British?
Well, as I said earlier on, I keep telling people I'm Indian now, so I tend to sort of, they say, where do you come from? And I go, oh, India. And then I say, oh, but I live in London. So why do you live in London? Because I'm married to an Englishman. That's why. Forced marriage in London. That was what it was. I spun this whole story. No, I mean, to be on a serious note, I'm genuinely, I not just me, but my husband, who is English, we're both genuinely feeling quite ashamed. We don't want to admit to we just don't.
Yeah.
It's so embarrassing, because you meet people here. We met a Russian couple, this guy. I mean, he hardly spoke English, but he managed to tell me that, they're escapees from Putin's regime. So he was saying to me how Putin was so awful, and they're living, they've actually left to come here. And then he said, but your prime minister, very, very bad man. genuinely looked at me very, very, concerned and pitiful, pitiful. And I said, yeah, this is before Boris had resigned. I said, yes, he's not too good. And he said, no, he parties. And what's the matter with his hair? He parties. There's something wrong with his hair. He looks like a clown. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is getting really, I mean, and genuinely, we've had conversations with Germans who said that, and they focus on the Brexit scenario, obviously. So yeah, it's a difficult time. I think you two should feel sorry for because it is really difficult defending. I don't know about Land of Hope and Glory and the bombers going by, but frankly, this sitting here, I'm having difficulty, actually supporting any of this. I really am, honestly.
Well, I envy the fact that you're out of it in some respects, because every day over the last few days, another candidate has stepped forward. And I think one of the things we were talking about before we started recording was, in a way, the focus here, Mina, appears to be on just tax cuts. I think all but one of the candidates is saying, oh, I'll cut taxes, and that's how we're going to get growth back into the economy. And Stan rightly said, well, this is sort of like broad brush approach at this moment in time. This is just about, can I get down to the last two, and then perhaps we'll pad it out with some detail. But actually, the point being that, at this stage, there should be the detail, because actually we should know what their position is on all of these factors, if it's going to be taken seriously by the MPs who are going to whittle it down to two. It seems as though the name is going to get the people with the, I get the feeling it's going to be the people with the name. It doesn't really matter what, there'll be no detail or very little detail about what they are going to do. It just seems crazy. We could, and I wouldn't vote for that party, but it seems crazy that there may be somebody who's not very well known, who's got a cracking idea and wants to do it very differently, but actually that's not going to cut through. It's going to be a big hitting name that's going to cut through. So it's a real shame. But for me, the issue that caught my eye, hey, we had 3 Secretary of States in a week. I think we had 3 Secretary of States in 5 days. So, and I was in a meeting with DfE officials on the day of the resignations, and actually they didn't know what the hell was going on. I mean, one of them said, I think we've lost all of our ministers now. And then it was a levelling up meeting. So the DfE was saying, I think we've lost all of ours now. And then about 5 minutes later, everybody in the levelling up department had gone as well. So I have to say, it must be quite, it's not just sort of disconcerting for them, but actually when you think about how significant the levelling up agenda is for parts of the country, to see it being stripped out, and then this great level of uncertainty about, well, where do we go now? You could feel the machine, which had just managed to get a little bit of momentum, just grind to a halt in the meeting, because everybody was looking around saying, well, I think we were promised this by Gove, Baroness Brown. Is that still valid? Does that still count? Like, is the white paper? Where's the white paper now? Where's the green? Where's the send paper going? Where is all this? It's all of that now is really in the long grass as we start to work our way through as to who it is going to be the leader of the Tory party and de facto the Prime Minister. So it's for me, it is about just the inertia that we're experiencing at the moment over here. For those of us who deal with civil servants and structures and things, and that's the sort of stuff that I do. It just feels as though we're in a bit of a void at the moment, and it'll take us until early September, mid-September to get ourselves out of it. But Stan, you had something as well, didn't you, about SATS papers?
SATS papers. Well, one of the schools that I know of didn't get half of the paper 2 of the spelling, grammar, and punctuation. Didn't come back. Now, some of the children had scored enough on paper 1 to have passed it, by want of a better term, but they've all just been given, I think it's an N you get for having not returned it or not done it. So despite the fact that they had enough marks to pass it, that they've just been marked an N. the DFE tried to push it on the school, saying, have they got absolute proof of postage? And they pointed out that paper 2 went with paper 1 in the same envelope when it's been marked. So it's very difficult to say that how it went. But I was looking before, and it's about a fifth of schools are saying they've got missing SATs papers, or they've had missing SATs results this time.
And then what's so funny then, Stan, is when you look at the SATs results, I was looking at the analysis, it is lower this year, far lower. So is that a surprise then? They haven't got the results for half the children. You know,
well, there's also, I mean, I know it's been outsourced to Capita, hasn't it?
Yeah.
That might tell you enough, actually.
Yeah.
But they've said that this is on Twitter, I don't know of this happening, some results given to the wrong children, so that some children have got results from tests they didn't take.
And I
no ministers.
Can't blame anybody, can you?
The other thing is, of course, that all the ministers, apart from the Minister for Children and Families, are all new. So they won't know what's going on and what's happening, and they won't have a view.
No.
I mean, the Quinn resigned and then got his job back the next day.
Who did?
Quince,
is it? He resigned, and then when he was the one that really sparked it, I think, because he was hung out to dry.
He was
to say that they'd reassured him that nobody knew about this pincher. It wasn't, and obviously that fell apart in the day. But he resigned, and I really expected him to resign out of, you've really embarrassed me publicly, and then took his job back under the same Prime Minister.
Yeah. I mean, they're talking about. Go on, Mina.
I wonder if he got his 17 grand for resigning and then got the job back.
I know.
And then got the job back again and didn't give the 17 grand.
Oh, no, I hadn't thought about that one. Surely that's not going to happen on that one.
Well, I mean, whether it does,
I can understand. I mean, I'm intrigued by the fact that Michelle Donnellan might get it, having held the post for 2 days. But actually, that's quite a good wheeze. If you resign, accept the resignation's accepted, then you're reappointed. You get it. I mean, that's terrible. Absolutely. It's as if we may as well all do it, because it's a quick 17,000, isn't it?
Yeah.
She's a rule against that, but that's the issue. There aren't any rules really, are there? And that's the bit about not having a written constitution. And I heard somebody say the other day, we didn't have one because all our constitution relies on having a prime minister with integrity and probity. What could possibly go wrong?
Amazing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
But I mean, isn't she said, just by the way, I'd heard that she said she'd give it to charity.
Yeah, I think I've heard that as well.
Yeah, we'll see when that happens.
Yeah.
Charity, which has got her name in it somewhere.
I have to say, I've met the Minister Quince, and actually, he I've spoken to him on a couple of occasions. He is a really principled man.
I agree, Frank. He came over like that because he wasn't saying this is the truth. He was saying this is what I've been told. I've been reassured this is the case. And I thought when he said all that, that was the way to say it. But he, behind you, the walls were tumbling down as he was saying it.
Yeah. I mean, we're just over half an hour. I want to sort of try and get a view from Mina about. You mentioned before about the strength of the current group that are pushing knowledge-based stuff. Can you speak and are sort of noted for a different view on this, but can you see fractures in that what appeared to be quite a solid, secure sort of base that quasi researchers, but some researchers had actually sort of managed to establish, with the powers that be, whether that's Amanda Spielman and others. Can you see it as that breaking, or is it going to be a change of government that's going to need to really sort of crack that completely?
I think there's a lot of groundswell of opinion around what's happening at the moment with the way Ofsted has genuinely turned away from inspecting without fear or favour, and is now has created a curriculum unit that works. So in my day, in your day, Frank, our curriculum unit, as we said earlier on, advised Ofsted policy and government policy, and was based on inspection and thematic surveys or whatever. Now it's very much about, this is how a curriculum should look. Basically, it's how a curriculum should look. This is how it should be taught, you know, and unless you sequence it and recall learning opportunities for children using cognitive science as this kind of, you know, pseudo speak, so to say, you know, we're not going to look at this very very positively.
Yes.
Now, I never in my career as an HMI, we were always told that you don't give advice. And I think I realized that time had come for me to go when I started feeling the need to somehow give advice, you know. So I sort of thought, no, integrity, you know, stop trying to. You obviously want to be part of the solution, the problem, not part of the problem. You want to be part of the solution, and you're not. You are actually going to tell them what they need to do. Nowadays, what inspectors are having to do is inspect their own advice, because the curriculum that is there, which is being researched, has come out of Ofsted and the DfE, looking at, you know, how we should be. So schools are very much in a very invidious position now, where not only that, but the reports that are coming out are so anodyne and bland. And QA is just taking out a lot of the character and the narrative of the school that I remember I used to write about. It was a real consummate skill, you know, to be able to present the character of the school, bringing in what children had said and what you saw in lessons and so on. None of that is there now. So actually, I've had two head teachers, one of a primary, one of a secondary, both of whom have had an RI judgment, and both of whom have said, well, hold on, in my school, I've got this as an area for development, which is termed RI, but in the school down the road, they got the same one and that was good. How does that work out? So there is a real reliability factor now creeping in, you know, about how reliable these judgments are. If you start inspecting your own advice. And the third area, I think, that is really not helping the case is this slavish addiction to phonics, to synthetic phonics. So again, two schools, one primary, one secondary, both of whom were put down, or, you know, area of concern in development, around the fact that the books that children were given were not in line with their phonics levels, so they could decode. So in other words, they were being given other strategies to work with, comprehension strategies. And I'm sorry, that's not the way we do it in England. Despite the fact that actually in the SATs exams, 25% of children still haven't got through on their phonics, you know, on their reading tests. And despite the fact that Finland, where they do, you know, phonics as well as reading comprehension, happens to be one of the top leaders of literate nations in the world, whereas England doesn't even feature in the top 10. So there's so much research that says children who've got dyslexia can't access phonics very easily. But hey, when you fail in primary school, your reading, and you arrive in secondary, look, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to give you more phonics.
I know.
Start all over
Somebody
again.
Was saying that the catch up, I really thought this was awful, but somebody was saying that there will be jobs for Key Stage 1 staff in secondary, in Key Stage 3.
Definitely.
You know, to sort of try and allow
more of the same.
More of the same.
And it's just not right, because children learn at different paces in different ways. I don't mean learning styles and all of that. I just mean in different ways, you know. In other words, some children might learn better using the alphabet rather than phonics, or consolidate with the alphabet. Some children might learn better with comprehension strategies, or just being allowed to, you know, read a book for pleasure and actually get to, you know, and that isn't just not happening, because, you know, when inspectors go in, Ruth Miskin, you know, read, writing, etc., that's prevalent, and it can carry. And the worst part is, it's the same in primary and the same in secondary. It's no coincidence that two schools that both RI schools end up having the same area for development, and that is not really how it
No.
should be.
Well, the thing is
My
that
concern on that though is the I know you called it pseudoscience about how the brain's working, but we are finding out far more about how the brain's working.
Absolutely.
And yet what we've done, it appears, is go, oh look, there's a better way to memorize stuff. Let's memorize more stuff using this way, instead of saying, well, no, actually the brain's about making links across things. Why aren't we desegregating the curriculum and putting those links in from early childhood, so that we're building up the links in the brain? But we seem to have got to this bit where that helps us get through exams, so that's a really good thing for us to do. And it shows, you know, we need, it's too late for me. I think we need to stop now and say, what are we examining for? Why are we examining? And how is that impacting on how children learn? Because
I agree.
Totally agree. I couldn't.
I was shocked. I have to say, it was only when I came out of Ofsted, I was shocked at the way that the secondary curriculum, and it's even more in the primaries now, but just governed by the GCSE.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
And actually, I hadn't actually got that sufficiently well when I was working in Ofsted. I mean, that's my fault. It's probably Ofsted's fault as well. But actually, unless we do something about that end of 16 and 18-year-old assessment, we're going to still have a pretty turgid experience for many children. And the kids that you were talking about, the system's designed to not enable a third of the kids to get a pass at 16. What's the offer for them then? Just the same as everybody else. It's the same as the kids who are going to get the top mark and go to Oxford.
Yeah, exactly. Ultimately, the aim is to go to university. The aim is not to follow different pathways, which is what you want, a curriculum, pathways curriculum, a bit like you have in Germany, where children can go, in other countries as well, where they can follow the route they want to follow. No, all children will do these EBAC subjects because E.D. Hirsch said so in 2012. That is the way to go. Let's give them academia until they're blue in the face. Then we'll level everything up. That's the one. We'll level everything up by doing that. And you know what? Those poor kids who've lost out and can't get to that point, well, tough. They can start all over again and go to a college of FE and take those. I mean, I know because I worked in colleges of FE myself, and we used to get these kids coming in at 16 without English and maths. And I really felt sorry for them because, they just failed and then we had to start them all over again doing English and maths. So I just think there is something inherently wrong. There is something inherently wrong. And I just feel Ofsted is part of the problem.
It's interesting, Mina, because I actually went to a sixth form college quite recently who, in a quite deprived community, that actually do really well at getting kids at 17 and 18 through their GCSE maths and English. Which actually says quite a lot, doesn't it, about why we're getting all the kids to do the assessments at exactly the same time. I mean, at the end of the day, some children, as you say, their journeys are slightly different. They're at different speeds. There's some things that really interest them, and then there are other things that don't. But actually, given a little bit more time, they can get there.
Frank, at Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, some of them are a year younger than the person who's sitting
I know.
Yeah, absolutely. That is absolutely true. I know my daughters, I've got two. One's a January child, born in January, and the other one's an August child. And the August child, sadly, is my older one, has got dyslexia, and he wasn't even diagnosed at all until she actually went to. She was told she was going to fail her GCSEs, and basically we had to tutor her to get her through, to get her B's, because she was told she was going to get D's and E's. And did they give her any extra help? No. Didn't even diagnose the dyslexia at all. It was only because we helped to get her GCSEs. We put her in a college then, in a private school, I should say. And then she got her A levels and went to university. But it was a struggle all the way through. And the nice thing was that the private school, at the end of the day, I mean, I didn't want to, but the private school diagnosed the dyslexia for her and helped her out.
Right.
But that's not right. A state school should be doing that, And so I think this is what's going wrong, really, in the system, that we're not catering for all the children. And that's what saddens me, really saddens me. So,
Well, we end up with all of this with a Room 101 issue. So have you had
Yeah.
have you had a chance to think about what you might want to put in room 101?
You only put one thing in, is it?
Only one thing.
Well,
It
I
can't
think
be the cabinet. I don't think you can put the cabinet in. I don't think you can put the government in. It's got to be one thing.
Can you put a finger in?
No,
Finger in.
that's a bit mean. That's mean, that is, honestly. What about collective noun? The one thing, collective noun. Actually, I was going to say, can we please put Ofsted in there for a minute? No. I don't mean, I mean, well, I think we should review Ofsted's role,
Yes.
but I don't know. One thing, I mean, for me, it has to be a change of direction in politics in the UK. If we can, if I can encapsulate that into what I would like to go in. If it was a wishing well, that's what I would like.
Yes.
To have a change of direction. I'm not saying I particularly want Labour, because I don't feel they have they don't, for me, they don't have an education manifesto that I can even sign up to at this stage, so I'm not sure, I'm not going for a particular party, but a change in direction in the way politics is at the moment. I think greater integrity, greater principled, a more principled approach to politics, and really more in the interests of the public rather than self-interest. I think that's what I would be looking for.
Very good.
Yeah, sorry, that's not 101.
We'll let that one in. Anyway, thank you so much, Meena, for joining us. And just one thing, if I may, a head teacher at a school in Stockport, when I spent a year after my year with Ofsted, who I got on very well with, she's published a book called Face in the Mirror. It's to do with well-being and mental and emotional well-being, and it's a series of poems that she's collated. Some of them have been written specifically for this, and it came out last week. So I bought my copy. I'd urge you, if you're interested, there's a series of material that go with it to help secondary school and primary school kids, teachers work their way through it. But actually, I wanted to call out. So thank you very much, Judy Morris, for producing this and the material that goes with it. So our next Frankenstein chat is with Shaheen Myers, who is very senior in the Leeds Education the local authority team. So Shaheen used to work alongside me in the co-op at the Co-op Academies Trust. So looking forward to what she's doing now, and I know she's got views similar to yours, I think, actually, Mina, so we'll see where that goes. But thank you, Stan, thank you, Mina, and thanks everybody, and we'll see, hopefully all being well, we'll see you all next week.